There are foods my grandmother cooked that had no name in the store. She never called them medicine. She never measured nutrients. She just knew. I am 97 years old, and when doctors ask me about supplements, I tell them I never took one. They look confused. They ask about my bones, my teeth. They want to know what I drink for calcium. I tell them the same thing my grandmother told me when I was small. We never needed milk. They think I'm joking. I'm not. There was a plant that grew everywhere, between the stones in the courtyard, along the edges of the field where nothing else would survive. My grandmother called it by its old name, the name the elders used. The Spanish called it something else before they tried to erase it. In English, people call it pigweed. Scientists call it amaranth. It grows in soil too dry for wheat, too poor for corn, too broken for most crops to even try. And yet this plant, this stubborn weed, contains more calcium than a glass of milk, more protein than most grains, more iron than spinach. It doesn't ask for fertilizer, it doesn't beg for water, it just grows. My grandmother never went to school. She couldn't read the word calcium. But she knew which plants built strong bones, which leaves kept the blood clean, which seeds gave strength when there was nothing else to eat. She didn't learn this from a book. She learned it from her mother, and her mother learned it from hers. This knowledge moved through hands, not pages. In the village where I grew up, amaranth was everywhere. We didn't plant it carefully in rows. It planted itself. The women would gather the leaves in the morning before the sun got too high. The young leaves were soft, almost sweet. We ate them raw sometimes, mixed with tomatoes and onions. Other times my grandmother cooked them down with a little salt, the way you might cook spinach, but these tasted richer, deeper. The seeds, tiny and dark, were saved in clay jars. Every family had jars of amaranth seeds stored for the dry season. The seeds were sacred, though no one said that word. You just knew. You didn't waste them. You didn't let them rot. You treated them with respect, the same way you treated bread or water, because there were times when amaranth seeds kept people alive, when the rains didn't come, when the harvest failed, when there was no money for meat or beans. Amaranth was there. I was 8 years old when I first helped my grandmother harvest the seeds. She showed me how to rub the dried flower heads between my palms, how to let the seeds fall into the bowl. The work was slow. The seeds were so small, like grains of sand, but darker, shinier. She told me these seeds were older than the church in the village, older than the Spanish language, older than any of the foods we bought in the market. She didn't explain why, but I felt it, the weight of those seeds in my hands, the way they poured like water but felt solid, ancient. Years later, I learned that amaranth was once banned, not by a government I could name, not by a law I could read, but by conquistadors who saw the Aztecs using these seeds in their ceremonies. They saw amaranth shaped into statues. They saw offerings made with honey and grain. They saw something sacred that wasn't Christian, and they burned the fields. They killed people for growing it. They tried to erase it from existence. They failed, because the grandmothers hid the seeds. They planted them in secret. They passed them down even when it was dangerous, even when it could cost them their lives. That's how powerful this plant was. People risked death to keep it alive. I didn't know any of this as a child. I just knew we ate amaranth almost every day. In the mornings, my grandmother would boil the seeds with water and a bit of cinnamon. It thickened into something warm and filling like porridge, but lighter. She never called it breakfast. She just made it, and we ate. Sometimes she added honey, sometimes just a pinch of salt. It kept us full until midday. The leaves we ate differently. Fresh, they were bright green and tender. Cooked, they turned dark, almost black. And the water they released was rich and mineral. My grandmother saved that water. She never threw it away. She used it to cook rice, to make soup, to water the plants that needed strength. She said the water held the power of the leaves. I didn't question it. It made sense. As I got older, I noticed something. The people who ate amaranth regularly aged differently. Their bones didn't break easily. Their teeth stayed strong longer. They didn't shrink the way some of the elders did, curving forward, losing height. My grandmother was 91 when she died, and she stood straight. Her hands were steady. Her mind was clear. She never drank milk. She never took a calcium pill. She didn't need to. I asked her once, when I was about 16, why we didn't just drink milk like the families in town. She looked at me the way she looked at questions that had no need to be asked. "Milk is for babies," she said, "and for calves. We are not calves." It wasn't cruelty, it wasn't philosophy, it was just fact. Milk was expensive, it spoiled quickly, it didn't grow from the ground. Amaranth did. Amaranth was free. Amaranth didn't need a cow or a farmer or a store. It just existed, and we used it. I left the village when I was 22. I moved to the city for work. I saw grocery stores for the first time, rows and rows of packaged food. I saw milk in glass bottles, then in cartons, then in plastic jugs. I saw pills labeled calcium supplement in bright orange containers. I saw fortified cereals, fortified bread, fortified everything. I realized something had shifted. Food was no longer food. It was now nutrients, isolated, measured, sold. Milk was no longer just milk. It was 310 milligrams of calcium per cup. Bread was no longer bread. It was enriched with vitamins and minerals. The food had been broken into parts, and the parts were being sold back to us as solutions. But solutions to what? Most of the people I knew growing up never had these problems. They didn't break bones. They didn't lose teeth early. They didn't need the pills. I kept eating the way my grandmother taught me. I bought amaranth seeds when I could find them, which wasn't often. Most stores didn't carry them. I asked once, and the man behind the counter looked confused. "You mean quinoa?" he asked. "No, not quinoa, amaranth." He shrugged. He didn't know it. I found it eventually in small shops that sold bulk grains. I cooked it the way I remembered. I didn't measure. I didn't count nutrients. I just cooked it and ate it the way my grandmother did, the way her grandmother did. Over the years, I watched people buy calcium supplements by the bottle. I watched them drink milk every morning, believing it would save their bones. I watched them do everything they were told, and still some of them broke their hips. Still, some of them developed osteoporosis. Still, some of them needed prescriptions and treatments and surgeries. I never needed any of that. I'm 97 and I've never fractured a bone. My doctor once asked me if I took calcium. I said no. He asked if I drank milk. I said no. He looked at my records, at my bone density scans, at the numbers on the screen. He looked confused. "Your bones," he said, "are stronger than most people half your age." I didn't explain. What would I say? That I ate a weed? That my grandmother taught me to trust plants that grow without permission? That the food we're told to fear or ignore is sometimes the food that saves us? There's a reason amaranth was banned, not because it was dangerous, because it was powerful, because it didn't need an industry. It didn't need packaging or marketing or middlemen. It grew on its own. It fed people on its own, and that made it a threat, not to health, to profit. When you can grow your own calcium, you don't need to buy it. When a single plant offers protein, iron, fiber, and minerals, you don't need 10 different supplements. When food is free and abundant, it disrupts the system that profits from scarcity. That's why amaranth nearly disappeared, not because it failed, because it succeeded too well. I think about my grandmother often. I think about the way she moved through the world with a certainty I rarely see anymore. She didn't read studies, she didn't follow trends, she didn't wait for permission, she just knew. And what she knew, she passed down. I still eat amaranth. I still cook the seeds in water, still eat the leaves when I can find them. I don't do it because a doctor told me to. I do it because it works, because my body, at 97, still works, because I trust the plants that survived empires, that survived centuries of suppression, that survived being called weeds. If a plant can survive that much, maybe it knows something we forgot. People today are terrified of aging. They take pills to slow it, creams to hide it, surgeries to reverse it. They spend so much money trying to stop what's inevitable. I never tried to stop it. I just didn't interfere. I let my body age the way it was meant to, supported by food that came from the ground, not a lab. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I never got sick. I did. I got tired. I slowed down. But I aged without collapsing. My body wore down slowly, the way a stone wears smooth in the river, gently, naturally. That's what amaranth gave me. Not immortality, not youth, just a gentle, steady aging, strong bones, clear mind, hands that still work, a body that still listens. There are no miracles here, no magic, just a plant that grows where it's not supposed to, a plant that refuses to die, a plant that holds more calcium than milk, more protein than meat, more resilience than anything you'll find in a bottle. And it's still here, still growing, still waiting. I don't know if people will go back to it. I don't know if they'll remember what was lost, but I know this: the plants don't forget. They keep growing, they keep offering, whether we notice or not. I didn't try to stay young. I didn't fight my age. I just listened to what my grandmother knew, and what she knew was simple. The earth provides if you pay attention, if you remember, if you don't let them convince you that the answer is always for sale. Amaranth taught me that, and I'm still here because of it.